Thank you. They of Ash never fail. Just a moment, then. The painting of Ariandel. Well, rotted scrap of it, that is. Go on. Take it. Touch it. And then the ashes were too.
Ashes of Ariandel is the first of two planned DLCs for From Software's Dark Souls 3. The DLC costs $15, though you can choose to spend $25 to buy both this and the future DLC and save $5 in the process. The DLC can be accessed rather quickly, just after reaching the Cleansing Chapel bonfire. Excluding the tutorial area, that means you only have to face two bosses, Vort of the Boreal Valley and the Crystal Sage, in order to get to Ariandel. It's not as absolutely immediate like in Dark Souls 2, but it's much faster than Dark Souls 1. It's a nice compromise in between. I prefer this method of reaching the DLC to the DS1 method of waiting until the middle of the game. If you're an experienced player, you can speedrun to the DLC very fast, and you can reach it at lightning speed if you're on New Game Plus and already have upgraded weapons.
Rejoice, my new friend, for this is a true haven of the forlorn, the cold and gentle painted world of Ariandel. Quick, go along. Find one for yourself.
The story of Ariandel is just as mysterious and obscure as any Souls game lore. But once pieced together, the area is quite an addition to the game, revealing far more about the painted world of Ariamis in Dark Souls 1 than we knew before. The individual stories around the followers of Farron are essentially repeats of the Watchdogs of Farron and Abyss Watchers in the base game, but the Millwood Knights are new and well done. It wasn't quite the enticing story some in the community were hoping for, but neither is it the magnificent critical piece of world-changing info found in Ariamis and DS1. The painted world of Ariamis also had some of the best atmosphere of terror and mystery in the entire series. Why were there bizarre mutants there? What did those cages hold? Why are so many hollows impaled? Nothing even remotely like that happens in DS3, even though the pit of hollow corpses being feasted upon by flies was pretty cool. The NPCs are another mixed bag. Some are fairly straightforward givers of clues about the world. They give hints about what's going on, like most tight-lipped Souls characters. None of them give cool items if killed or fight back, really, in any meaningful way. The major characters in the game, though, are very different. The implications and subtle hints at meaning are excellent and rewarding. One is the other Ash, who is referenced many times by other characters. Apparently a second Unkindled wanted a worthy cooperator for beating the final boss, and he drags us into this world. We finally get to meet the Painter, as she's called. Likely the person who has the magical ability to paint pocket dimensions and created the Ariandel and Ariamis from Dark Souls 1. Who exactly she is, I'll leave up to the lore masters of the Souls community. Is she Priscilla's daughter, thus perhaps Seath's granddaughter? Why does she have the ability to make entire worlds? And why do people that are forlorn, as they call them, strange, wicked, or otherwise having no place in the regular world or not wanting to continue the cycle end up there? The final boss and her father have quite a bit of interesting dialogue and emotional power as well. All in all, a good effort worth looking into for the lore enthusiasts who like to puzzle out meanings from cryptic dialogue like myself. Ariandel is pretty thin on the new stuff front. Even my most hated of the DS2 DLCs, the Old Iron King, had some pretty fantastic armor to grab at the very least. Ariandel has a new axe, a new curved sword that's supposedly OP as hell, and some dex and strength specific weapons. The dex weapons are razor claws that look just like Freddy Krueger made them, along with a mixed razor claw saber set. Pretty spiffy and cooler looking with a better moveset than the claws in the base game. But still, there were claws in the base game already, so this is kind of a repeat, just with a different moveset. Plenty to entertain the dex-based characters, I suppose. There's also an offensive torch that can be upgraded and used as a weapon. pretty unique, and it actually has an awesome move where you breathe fire like a fakir at it to attack foes. The strength weapons include a giant hammer, and not to my taste. I love the Great Club because it looks like a wooden tree branch that Hercules is depicted wielding sometimes, but I can't stand any of the giant hammers in any of the games. They don't look realistic at all, and for some reason melted heads are the norm. It just doesn't look cool and plays worse than the Great Club. There's also a giant two-headed battle axe that looks pretty badass. It's also a faith weapon, and, well, faith weapons are pretty thin in DS1, so I'm glad they're expanding them in the sequels, with a special ability to cause a giant earthquake attack. Not practical because you'll be interrupted 9 times out of 10 when using it, but cool looking nonetheless. One of the bosses even gives you a cool sword called Valor Heart. The weapon looks cool like the broad-bladed sword used in Clash of the Titans, and its moveset is unique with a shield automatically built into the set. It was different from standard swords and fun to play around with, but the real treasure of the game is the Follower's Javelin. It has a standard spear moveset, but the weapon skill is throwing it like a pylon right at an enemy. Most RPGs have bows and crossbows, but ones with throwing spears are a little unusual. For someone obsessed with Greco-Roman warfare, peltasts, and legionaries, having a javelin is amazing. Maybe I just haven't played enough RPGs, but the last one I can remember doing this with is the Amazon in Diablo 2, but there's probably been one since then I'm just forgetting. I've played around a lot with this weapon and adore it. The damage from the throwing skill is high, making it worthy of investing points in skill, typically not the most useful thing in the game. It retains the standard functionality of a spear and even has low stat requirements of 12 strength and 12 dex, meaning almost any character can use it. It's a great addition to Dark Souls 3, and you can get it right at the start of the DLC. The final boss also gives you 1 or 2 items, a scythe-class weapon with a unique skill, but pretty much the same as any other scythe weapon in the game to me, or a catalyst for miracles. Nothing too special, although it does have a weird skill that you can use with it that's very flagellant. Finally, there's an odd greatsword with the Greatsword of Artorias type stat requirements, so you need strength, dex, faith, and intelligence to use. Like an Artorias build, that would take quite a specific kind of character you were going for without the min-maxing usual in the game. There are also some new spells in the game. I haven't checked all of them out, but they seem pretty good. The Miracle is this weird discus that you throw at an enemy that actually boomerangs back to hurt them twice. And there's even a secret little area you can find with a new Pyromancy Flame and new Pyromancy spell, but I'll leave that to you to find. The armor in the game, unlike the weapons, is far more dull. None of it appealed to me. The Follower and Slave Knight armor is unremarkable and basic, nothing too special. The Millwood Knight set looks like something you could wear while cosplaying as a Night's Watchman from Game of Thrones, but it's not really to my taste. Wilhelm's set is simply not to my liking. It looks a bit like the Assassin's gear, maybe, but altered to be a bit more knightly. A great big goose egg for me on the armor front. I thought the Millwood Knight shield is pretty cool looking. We were lacking a kite shield for the game, and it's nice to have one, even if it doesn't look nearly as good as the kite shields of Mage Knights and Dragon's Dogma. All in all, purely in terms of items, this DLC isn't really worth it for me. Despite how great the Javelin is, the other items are tepid at best, and the lack of any good armor is criminal. Not a very high score for me in that department. Ariandel is a cold, wintry environment and looks absolutely gorgeous. The best looking areas of all 3 Dark Souls titles have been in frosty landscapes with swirls of snow and wind. The emptiness or negative space approach to level design in the Souls series is most atmospheric and visceral in the emptiest season of winter. The vast snowy fields filled with wolves and forlorn towers are some of the most aesthetically pleasing in all of DS3. Sadly though, we can leave the painted world immediately after arriving. That was not the case in the first game, where only a certain act allowed you to go home. It added another layer of mystery and wonder to the world that is not present in the lackluster Ariandel. Unfortunately, the levels fail against the 2 other Dark Souls titles in the winter area. First and most superficially, it's not nearly as beautiful as Aleim Lois. That icy level was like a prototype of Irithyll, except a daytime version of it. The city was huge with impressive castles, houses, and palaces, all with a distinct look not seen before in the game. It wins purely based on looks, at least. Second, Ariandel is no match whatsoever for its painted counterpart, Ariamis. Comparing those 2 levels, we can see a clear design issue with both games. Bigger is usually not better for a Souls game. In DS1, Demon Souls, and Bloodborne, the levels were claustrophobic with numerous twists and turns. The levels typically did not allow us to see much more than a small area at any one time. Dark Souls 2 deviated from that and made larger but flatter and more horizontal levels, to the game's detriment. Ariandel from the start is a wide open area with plenty of free space to run around in. It looks great, but it plays poorly. Open plains are great for open-world games like Skyrim and The Witcher 3, but a Souls game is different. The level should be tight and contained with every micron used, up and down as much as forward and backward. Strangely, Ariandel can be raced through almost to the end boss without fighting anything. Running past enemies instead of fighting them has always been a strategy for the Souls games, but this takes it too far. There has to be some challenge to get to the other side. Ariamis in Dark Souls 1, on the other hand, had brilliant level design. Taken as a whole, it was a small level, but that was disguised with sewers, locked towers, and above all, short, small areas, without much room to see it all and spoil its size at any one time. One area of Ariandel, called the Snowy Mountain Pass, succeeds at this with twists, turns, and verticality. So I had a lot of fun playing and cooperating in it, but the entire level needed to be like this to get a good grade for me. I simply can't imagine running around this level in the future. The gameplay itself is what matters more than any other aspect, and poor level design will put off a lot of players. The base game of Dark Souls 3 costs $60, but you can get 40, 50, 60 hours of enjoyment out of that. This game has about 3 hours, maybe a little longer, and costs $15. That's not really enough. Now don't get me wrong, there are still some good points to it. There are secret areas and doors to find, and there are some areas with verticality in them and those twists and turns. But overall, it's just not really up to the high standard of Dark Souls 1. Overall, the level design, I would say, is mediocre, sort of a C grade in the middle. And it really just isn't big enough to justify the price tag. It's so short, it just doesn't make any sense. The enemies in the area are not spectacular either. The basic creatures are largely humanoid and not terribly difficult. All of them save one require ganging up on you to work. The basic troopers, called Farron followers, are easy humanoid warriors. In groups they can be a little tough, but so can any enemy in the Souls game. There are wolf packs all over the first zone, and again, they're trivial in single combat and not even that bad in groups. The wolves hover around you and only charge in one or two at a time. The next enemy is actually quite challenging, but again, only if it's supported by other units. The witch trees, or whatever they're called, are mostly stationary environmental hazards that cast spells. They can move a little bit, but not fast enough to really be a problem. One attack is a dangerous frost breath, and the other is a powerful multiple fireball spell like the magic dots shot at you by Aldrich or the Twin Princes. They're pretty weak on their own and can die pretty quickly, but a whole forest of them is a serious hazard. The next are the Millwood Knights. They're great fun to fight one-on-one. They're very tough and have a variety of weapons to pummel you with. It's classic Soulsborne type combat, like if you were fighting the Dark Knights or some of the Lothric Knights. Finally, the next enemy of note is a Crow Knight, or something like that. He's got a roided up version of the Crow people from the Painted World of Ariamis. They have a lot of HP, move very fast, and have a tough set of speedy attacks. They can be difficult and fun to fight. Lastly, there are strange giant flies that spit maggots on you, causing bleed damage. A simple torch can alleviate that, though. The flies are pathetic enemies, not even dangerous in groups. Overall, a mediocre set of foes. Don't get me wrong, if you like Souls combat, and of course I do, it's a ton of fun, but nothing really non-standard from what you get in the base game. Nothing really worth an additional purchase, I would say. The bosses are a mixed bag. The first one is a bit like the Dark Souls 2 gank bosses. Well, a little bit anyway. The first phase is a humanoid figure surrounded by basic wolves. At about half health, he summons in a giant Sif-sized wolf. The man is easily defeated at this point, but the wolf is tougher. If you hide in the pillars at the center of the map, though, it kinda makes the fight a cakewalk. Relies heavily on group attacks, an enemy that can mysteriously bypass a shield, even tower shields with quite a few attacks. All in all, not that good. Not awful, middling. The final boss fight, and there are only two in the DLC, is excellent. One of the best in DS3, actually. It's a 3-phase boss fight. No, not 2, 3-phase. It's against a humanoid woman with a powerful scythe and Priscilla-like invisibility moves. But the fight changes unexpectedly with each phase. Dueling with this strange woman was thrilling and really reminded me of another amazing boss fight against Lady Maria in Bloodborne. Defeating this woman was somewhat hard with an NPC summon you get, and very challenging on your own. If nothing else, this boss fight will cement the DLC into place as worthy of inclusion to Dark Souls 3. I haven't actually played much of the arena aspect of DS3, so I can't give you more than a basic overview. It's simple if you like PvP combat, it's a fun addiction to jump right into action without going through invasions and so forth. It's a fun way to compete, and there's even a cooperative mode to have fun with a group. Not a bad addition, though. It may distract people from the standard multiplayer system, drying up regular invasions or cooperation a bit, but presumably in the future it's going to be just as empty and meaningless as the arena in the DLC for Dark Souls 1, so who knows what's going to happen. If I had to make a recommendation on this DLC, I would say reluctantly to skip it. The $15 price tag is simply not worth it. Maybe if it were 10 tops, I would change to a reluctant yes, but not more than that. The area is small, not outstanding in design, filled with dull enemies and mediocre items and armor. The characters are well done and the lore is excellent by DS3 standards. The area looks great, but not as great as the other extremely good ice areas in the previous two games. The final boss is absolutely amazing and maybe one of the best in the entire series, but does that add up to $15? I don't necessarily know. Both DS1 and Bloodborne had the best DLC in the series, and they both had only one DLC. That was the key. Focus all of your efforts onto one zone. Dividing your efforts, as I've heard they were originally going to do with the old Hunters in Bloodborne, is terrible. All of your force and effort needs to be allocated to one small zone. Only then can you press forward where you need to go. I certainly don't regret buying it, but I'm a Souls fanatic, and when it comes to buying games, it's usually Souls or nothing. I enjoyed myself, I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with that javelin, but the experience was very short and fairly expensive. There is definitely stuff to find and stuff to enjoy and even stuff to love in this DLC, but it's very short to what's come before it. Despite moments of brilliance like the final boss fight, this DLC really didn't do a whole lot for me, and probably should have been incorporated into one super large DLC. And we just have to hope that the next DLC does better than this. Still, not bad. If you loved it, I enjoyed myself a lot too. I'm not saying it's horrible, but maybe they could have done a lot more with this. I'm just saying if they had more time.
My name. I swore an oath. I am worthy of freedom.
Hi there, thanks for watching my review of the Dark Souls 3 DLC, Ashes of Ariandel. Please like this video and tell me what you thought of the DLC in the comments and whether you plan on buying the next DLC when it comes out. I have multiple playthroughs on my channel of Dark Souls 1 and 2, which I've linked below. Please check those out. Bye!